I'm Susan Drumm, and welcome to the Enlightened Executive, where your personal evolution sparks your leadership evolution. Each episode, we feature groundbreaking techniques and strategies to help you get the edge in personal and leadership effectiveness. Today, we're focusing on strategy and innovation, and I'm excited to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Kaihan Krippendorff. Kaihan began his career with McKinsey & Company before founding the growth strategy and innovation consulting firm Outthinker. His growth strategies and innovations have generated over $2.5 billion in revenue for many of the world's most recognizable companies, including Mellon, Citibank, L'Oreal, Microsoft, and Viacom. He's the best-selling author of 5 books, most recently the Edison Award-nominated Driving Innovation from Within, a guide for entrepreneurs. He's a member of the prestigious Thinkers 50 Radar Group, who has recognized Kaihan as one of the 8 most influential innovation thought leaders in the world. Kaihan is founder of Outthinker Strategy Network, an exclusive network of chief strategy officers from large organizations with over $1 billion in revenue. With a mother from Bangladesh and a father from Germany, Kaihan brings a diverse, holistic, global perspective to everything he does. So welcome, Kaihan.
So great to be here and see you, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we were just talking. I think we've known each other for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. We've collaborated together, and I'm really excited for you to share your wealth of knowledge around driving innovation from within, coaching to drive innovation thinking. And that's where we're going to start.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that would be a great topic. I know that, you know so much about coaching, and I think that you a lot of the people that are listening here, when they're often doing work through others, right? As you get to be more senior, you're doing work through others. So how you not manage them, but I like to look at managing the conversations that you had. And some of those conversations lead to exciting big ideas and possibilities, and sometimes they don't, right? So that's what I've really been interested in, is how do you as a leader engage in discussions and use language that opens possibilities.
I love that. So it's a combination of coaching and driving innovation from within, which is your latest book. You have talked about something called the 4th option. Yes. Can you explain that concept? And after we talk about that, maybe we talk about how to generate that within and using coaching your employees. To find the 4th option.
So if you look at breakthroughs in strategy in all domain, whether that's sports or business or chess, or, when there are breakthroughs in how it's played, it's rarely that the innovator did something that others couldn't do. If Dick Fosbury went over backward in the Olympics, 1968 in the high jump, people could have done that 4 years before, 8 years before, 12 years before. Blockbuster could have bought Netflix. Yahoo could have bought Google. It's rarely, and this is one of the issues I have in the study of strategy, as strategy being about doing something your competitors can't do, but it almost never is the case. It's usually that others don't choose to do it. And so like this 4th option idea, it's a metaphor. It says there's a point at which others stop thinking, when they start repeating themselves. That's represented by 3. 3 is just, as great orders repeat in 3s. The 3 is kind of magic. In Christianity, there's the Holy Trinity. At McKinsey, they train you to break everything down into 3s and 3 sets of 3s and 3 sets of 3s. Sure, it's the same at BCG as well. And so that sort of just symbolizes that moment where you feel like, okay, we got the options. Let's start narrowing down the options. And that's
if we have 3, we should be good.
Exactly. Exactly. It feels good. And so what you want to do is recognize when other people feeling that and saying, okay, well, what else?
Right. So pushing beyond to the 4th option will open doors to look at things in a new way, from what I understand. Can you? Yes. So why 4? Why not 5, 6, whatever?
Well, there are usually there are many more, right? So we're actually just before this, I was working with a client, really fascinating small client called Earth Doggy. They have a website that sells earth-friendly dog products like collars and beds and things, but primarily focused on rescue dog owners. And so we went through anyway, we're at the stage where we're looking at our options. We have 148 options. So the way to get to that fourth option is to come up with 148 options and then work your way down. I think if you look at like the companies that are really vibrant, let's look at like, anything Elon Musk does, right? They are looking constantly like idea machines, right? It's just a flow of ideas, and not just product ideas, pricing ideas, promotion ideas, positioning ideas, people, HR, organizational ideas across the whole spectrum. And so it's really about, firing on all cylinders to get those ideas flowing.
Absolutely. So what about the organization that fears that if we just go through all these different ideas and we're not executing, we're scattering our forces? We just need to decide, commit, and move forward. What would you say to that?
Oh, you do need to decide, commit, and move forward. And you can't do more than you can do. There's always bandwidth. There's always resources. The risk is to start making choices and executing when you haven't considered all of your ideas. I think it's almost frustrating how lazy people are when designing their strategies. I mean, if you were going to install a kitchen, right? Think about all of the little choices that you would make, what color and where does it align, and where, and you go through all these different iterations with the architect and looking at materials, right? We spend, probably a company probably spends 5% of that time in designing their strategy. Like they're in a rush. So they build these kitchens that are just, cookie cutter, right? So I think if we can, embrace it as something that's creative and fun, then we can bring that kind of energy to designing our businesses.
Yes, yes. Well, and I also like the whole concept of driving innovation from within, because the people that are closest to the customer, closest to the front line, probably have the best ideas that you haven't really tapped into, right?
Yep.
And so what's your strategy to involve the rest of the organization in generating all of these options?
Yeah. Well, the book, I was inspired for writing it from a client of mine, Macmillan. And there's a woman, Jean Faywall, and you maybe don't know her if you're not in literature, but she is kind of the person behind Goosebumps and Babysitters Clubs. And so her work. But anyway, she came up with this idea and she just made it happen from within. And it's this platform for would-be self-published authors to put put up manuscripts and kind of it's kind of like a crowdsourced platform. And I could go into it, but they made a whole bunch of radical decisions. So anyway, she did this and I thought, wow, it's pretty amazing that she did this. Usually it doesn't happen. And so I wanted to find out, is she the rule or is she an anomaly? And what I found is actually she is the rule, that 70% of society's most impactful innovations came from employees working inside established companies. And so this idea, this mythology that we follow, that I follow, I'm an entrepreneur, I love entrepreneurs, but you talk about who's most innovative business person and it's the same names, right? They all look the same, they all have the same story, the same narrative, but it's not true. So, that's what spurred me to write this book, is honoring, encouraging, recognizing the employees, and because they're the ones that are going to come up with the next internet, with the next vaccine, with the next heart pump. It's going to be them. Right?
Yes. And so there's a number of things that need to be in place to make that happen, right?
Yes.
I mean, number one, you need to be able to create the platform to generate those ideas from those employees and be listening. Mm-hmm. Number two, you have to make it safe to fail. Innovation requires failure, right? You get to try and look and explore. And a lot of organizations that I work with, they I come in and when I ask those questions about, are you able to take risks and try new things? I think a lot of employees feel like there isn't the appetite to do that. And it's just easier to do what works and stick with the status quo. So I'm curious to know what you recommend for how, and maybe there's other things that need to be in place besides what I listed. So
Yeah.
what do you see?
I mean, in my research, I interviewed 150 internal innovators and I asked them this question,
Yeah.
what's the barrier? And there are really 7. And I forced it into an acronym that hopefully is easy to remember. It's innovate with 1 N. And so versus intent, they're not trying anymore. Need, they don't understand what the company needs. So when you do encourage the ideation, they're not innovating in areas that are strategically important to the company. And so then what happens then is then they get told bad idea, bad idea, bad idea, and then they lose the intent, you know? Options, just generating lots of options, not 4 or 3 options, but 148 options. V is about value blockers, is that you have to understand how, it's not understand, you got to learn how to design business models. And because it's very likely that the business model around your innovation is going to be in conflict with the business model that you operate in. So just learning business model design. And the next one's act. And I think this is where the risk comes in, is making these small, frugal experiments instead of asking for a lot of money. Most of the innovations I studied, the innovator didn't get formal approval from the boss. And which is also why an important cultural value is proactivity. But they scaled down the first step. So they're only risking $5,000, something like that, right?
Right.
Team is, it's hard to pull together the team that you want to work on with because they don't all report to the same boss. And then environment is, there's a bundle of things around culture and leadership and organizational structures and the kind of talent that you need. But the thing is, these are all actually well understood. You know, it's almost like, I don't know, if you went to a doctor and the doctor was just making it up, right? And hadn't actually gone to medical school.
Sometimes I feel like they are.
Yeah, sorry, right? But you know, I think that there's a lot known. We know what they are, and we know how to, what techniques to help overcome them.
Yeah, so the environment piece I want to dig into, but before we do that, so how do you help people think of 140 ideas?
Yeah.
Because there must be some techniques or things that you can share with listeners on how do I possibly get people to think outside the box at that magnitude?
Yeah. So 2 things I'd say about that is it's very hard to think outside the box. And I try not to ask people, I give people different boxes to think in. And I know that sounds kind of like like a phrase or something, but I really do. So in my methodology for the ideation, you pick an area of the business, because I focus on business ideation, but you could do anything else. So there are these 8 Ps. I started alluding to before: positioning, product, price, place, promotion, processes, physical experience, and people. All of those 8 areas are areas to look for innovations. And then you have this 8 rows, if you will, and then you have 36 columns. And these represent different strategic thinking patterns. And so I think that there are 36 patterns. And so move early to next battleground is about like plan for tomorrow rather than today. Coordinate the uncoordinated is kind of like platform and network. And so then you pick an area and you say, okay, let's pick pricing for this year. And we're going to come up with some great pricing ideas. Okay, where is the next battleground in pricing? Oh, should we accept cryptocurrency? Oh, we should have touchless payment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know, and forcing them into that box, it restrains. The restraints actually encourage creativity.
Got it. So you have that ability to focus the attention in one area, but that within that gives me not just a blank canvas, but something to work with.
Yes, exactly.
I like
something
it.
To work with.
I like
something
it a
to
lot.
work with. Yeah.
And I know those stratagems because you and I have done some work around that, and it's incredibly.
We did a career one, remember?
Yes, we did. We did some work helping people find new careers using the 36 stratagems, and those are in ways for competition, ways to outthink your competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that framework and how you use it in the innovation space. And well, let's talk about the environment piece, because in leadership development, that's obviously one of the most important areas that we want to create the conditions that allow your employees to thrive and contribute and feel engaged and be collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see from your research that creates the right type of environment for that to happen?
Yeah. So as part of the research for the book, I read every academic study I could find that showed a statistically significant correlation between some organizational attribute and higher or lower levels of internal innovation. Technically, entrepreneurial intention is a measure. And they really fall into four buckets. There's leadership, there is organizational structure, there are cultural values, and then there's talent, the type of talent, But which of those sound more interesting to you? Organizational structure, culture, talent.
Culture and the talent piece. Absolutely.
Yeah. So on the talent, what's really interesting is that the attributes that make someone naturally effective at being internal innovators, they look different than entrepreneurs. And in some ways, they are similar. They tend to be innovative thinkers, certainly. They tend to really know the market, and they tend to be proactive. They take action. How they relate to risk, however, is very different in that they look to create risk asymmetry. They look to create a situation where they bet a little to get a lot because they're not betting their money. Mm-hmm. Another one is that they actually love the politics. It's not that the politics is necessary evil. I'm going to learn to do it. They view the political challenge as part of the problem-solving process. Mm-hmm. So they take a lot of time to line up the cannons, but they know when the cannons are lined up and they go off all at the same time, because you're doing this inside a company with scale, then it's a big boom,
Yeah. I would think that they're great collaborators and being able to build coalitions around the idea. They know they can't just lead and jump in and say, wave the flag and say, here it is, here it is. They've got to bring people along the journey. So how do they collaborate? How do they engage other parts of the organization, other thinkers of the organization, so that it almost feels like a joint solution versus just coming from them? And I think then that goes to the individual psyche as well. If I need to hoard it and keep it for me so that I get all the accolades, because what I'm really going after is try to get the accolades, then I'm going to struggle in actually getting the idea implemented. It's this weird paradox.
Yes.
Whereas if I'm just, if my mission is about the good of the idea and the company, then I don't care if I get credit, you get credit. I'm not worried about that. I'm just driving it forward. And that's the difference, I think, between conscious leadership and not conscious leadership.
You're 100% right. That sixth attribute, so there's six attributes. The sixth one is intrinsic value. They get intrinsic value for innovating. They're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for the praise, which is, not 100%, always the case, but that's also why it was so difficult to find these people, because you find this great big innovation and you're like, wow, who came up with it? And you don't know, because they are in the woodwork from behind, is spurring from behind. There's that Taoist phrase, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but something about the great leader and the people say we did it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to find these people to get in their heads and interview
to be able to take that on. Well, do you have any suggestions on how to hire for that? And if yes or no, depending on where we go, I'd also, well, then how do I coach internally based on what I got? Mm-hmm. How do I get them more innovative if that's what I'm looking for?
Yeah. Well, I think you can look for, if someone has the gets intrinsic value from innovating, and if they have the other attributes that make them good at innovating, they probably have done it before. So you can look for in their past roles where they have rolled the ball that went down a hill, so where they've made something happen or started something that happened. And it won't be necessarily on their resume. It won't be, VP of new whatever, it will be, it'll be part of their job description. So asking them for examples like that, I think, is a great way to find them. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the coaching, this coaching methodology that I use from Outthink the Competition ideas, which are basically kind of 5 steps, right? It's not unlike a coaching methodologies that you use. Imagine what's the future look like? What do we want to be in that future? Dissect what part of the problem should we focus on? Expand. What are some options and options and options and options and options and options? Analyze and choose those options that we're going to move forward with. And then the last one, sell, is getting people on board.
How long should you let the ideation process run in your mind? Is it a certain number of ideas? Is it a certain time frame before you choose and commit?
I like the number, and the number depends on what type of problem you're solving. If you are looking for one big idea, but your core business is doing fine, but you're looking for one big idea, I want to get at least 40 ideas. If it is both core and new, right?
Yes.
We need ideas to also protect the next 2 to 3 years, in addition to like what's going to be really a breakthrough idea. Usually we're at between 100 and 200 ideas.
Got it. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and what does it take to generate that? Is it over multiple sessions? Is it them working independently and then bringing the ideas? How do you suggest implementation?
I think that best practices are supposed to be let people ideate and then bring ideas and then continue. But for practical reasons, I rarely have the time with the client to do that, because the client's like I think tomorrow or Wednesday I'm going into the city and they want to get it all done in 3 hours,
Right. Yes.
Like, okay.
Oh yes.
If you really want to increase the volume of ideas, what you can do is you can take the team and break them up. We did this for a television network. This was one of my favorite projects. And we had just like the top leaders, right? So the head of the 2 studios, the head of daytime, the head of news, the head of ad sales, right? Just like the rock stars. And then we put them into different groups, and we had the people group, HR group. We had the distribution group, which is the placement group. You notice I'm doing the APs again, right?
Yeah.
And then they all worked in groups of like 6 or 7 people. They each had like 50 ideas. They narrowed it down to their top 10. So now we had a top 10 list. So I think there were 7 different top 10 lists. So 70 ideas. Yes. There was some overlap there. So then we went down to like 50 ideas, and then we kind of voted in a certain way, and then got this heat map, and then we massaged them down to the 5 big themes. And I don't know that really whether that ended up becoming the strategy, but I think it informed the strategy. And if you look at how well they're doing now, you can see that they started thinking about these 5 things in different ways.
Yeah. Well, this is when I would love to hear some examples of what doing this work difference it's made for some of your clients. And I know you've got some of the best stories, so I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, well, that was a great one. So this one's kind of if you're not in finance, this probably won't make a whole lot of sense. But there was this one woman, and she ran a group that managed $25 billion in agricultural real estate. And they were looking at how do we increase the value of our holdings. And so we started brainstorming, and people were going through kind of operational things. Let's, get more efficient at our kind of M&A activities and things like that. And she's a real outthinker. She said, her name's Heather Davis. She said, wait a second, guys, imagine this future. Someone walks into Starbucks, and while they're waiting in line, they pick up their phone, they open their E-Trade account, and then they buy or sell a security that's backed by agricultural real estate. Seems like not a big deal, but you can do that with commercial real estate. And, there are REITs and other, tradable, vehicles. You could do that with residential real estate, but you can't do that with agricultural real estate. And a part of the reason is, you can look at like a pool of buildings, and you can, based off of the zip code and the size and what the average rents, you can calculate what that is without having to go in and look at the building.
Right.
So you can then put all these together, and you could say, these are all worth this much. But agricultural real estate is, it's everyone's a different shape. There are too many variables. So what they decided to do was they gave a grant to a university to start tracking transactions and start creating this database of agricultural real estate so that they would have the information base to launch such a create even the context to do that. So I think that I think that they're close. There's a lot of normalization you have to do, but that's I think an example, right, of you're about to go down one way, kind of end up doing the same thing everyone's doing, but then you disrupt that and say, and what you do makes no sense if what you want to do is just optimize, for the near term. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love in both innovation about how to approach, like, how can we figure this out? But the use of a partnership. Let's leverage the university to be able to do some of the research. We'll give them the grant to be able to do that then we can, that's innovative in itself. Right?
Yeah. And I think increasingly we are competing in ecosystems as well. And so I think that that's also a skill that we all need to build, especially when you're doing big innovation. Big innovation usually is done, and there's been a long-term trend that it's less and less done by one organization, but rather through partnerships and coalition building.
What have you seen in terms of leaders being able to make it safe to fail and innovate? You mentioned already they take smaller bets, but I also think it has to be something about how the leader shows up.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. I think, the whole area of psychological safety and showing how it correlates with innovation, diversity of thought, which can correlate with gender and race and things, but it's really diversity of thought that matters. So, creating this context. But, I think that as a leader, a real useful, immediate thing that you can work on is when someone shares an idea, what is your micro reaction to that idea? Do you giggle, right? Do you smirk? Or even do you praise? And that's dangerous because at least when I'm facilitating, I try never to respond to idea. I don't even say, oh, that's a great idea. Because then the next person with an idea, I'm going to have to say great idea to every idea, right? Otherwise I'm telling them that's not a great idea. So can you really be just open to ideas and look at that moment at how you react to ideas? I think that's the number one thing that you can immediately have. That is interesting.
So in a way, you're just staying curious, but not commenting, not judging the idea, good or bad.
Right. Yeah. That will come later. In ideas, imagine, dissect, expand. In the expand, you're ideating, you're expanding options. And then you just know that later we're going to go to analyzing them and judging them. But when you collapse those two, when you have a conversation like, here's an idea, oh, we tried that before. Here's an idea, oh, let me tell you why that won't work. Or here's that idea, whatever that is. When you collapse those, it just sucks out the air. And there's no space for ideas. The other thing, I think the other part to look at is in my framework in Analyze, we have this one type of idea, we call it the crazy idea, which is a difficult, high impact idea. And difficult, high impact ideas, most people shrug them off. Most companies shrug them off. They put them on the back burner until 3 years later, a competitor has done them. And then they're jealous that this competitor, they're disrupting. Like, I had that idea 3 years ago, but the difference is you didn't do anything with it, right? And so having space for impossible ideas. Now, we can do that usually with technology. If someone says, let's build some new technology, a rocket ship or whatever, well, technically we can't do it, but that's what we have R&D departments for, right? But when the barriers are, oh, customers won't want it, oh, we can't sell it, oh, we don't know how to price it, right? Oh, how do we operationalize it? Those are all problems to solve. So circling some crazy ideas, high impact, difficult ideas, and having them on your agenda, and every month or every quarter, whatever you have your meeting, you work on those crazy ideas and keep those alive. Make it okay for people to hold on to crazy ideas.
Yes. And do you even, I would say the next best thing you could do tomorrow is create one of your team meeting sessions where you identify the crazy ideas and then keep them alive in your system.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
That's a simple thing to start doing.
Yes.
Let's put crazy ideas on the table and we'll keep a running list of them.
Yes. And have them explicitly on your strategy as things that you're not going to execute, but you're going to work on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Turning into winning moves. Yes.
Well, this has been so fascinating, Kaihan. Thank you for coming on board. Where can people learn more?
Probably the best is my speaker website, which is my first name.net, kaihan.net, KAIHN.net. Excellent.
I love it. Well, thanks again for sharing all the amazing wisdom. You have so many frameworks. It's amazing. It's incredible. Such a good consultant.
I do love frameworks. Thank you for having me. It was so great seeing you again.
Great to see you again. If you like this episode, you're not going to want to miss my interview with Chris Michelle, who shares with us how to build a culture of trust and promote excellence by normalizing constructive feedback. Let's lead the way. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'd like to point you to the next important step. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when we release new content. I'll see you on the next episode of The Enlightened Executive.